everyone, so today we're going to do an introduction to portraiture. Let's get to it. Alright, so portrait photography, such a huge genre, such an important genre. When photography first started, it was portraiture that really made a difference in people's lives. And now, in general, we do take photography for granted, right? Everyone has a phone with a camera, so it's easy to just, not think of photography as being that big of a deal. But just stop and think for a moment about how important photographs are to our lives. How many photos do we see a day? They inform so much of what we know about the world. So, for example, in the past, only the really wealthy could commission a painting, before photography. So only they knew what their relatives looked like, what people that had died before them looked like. Now think about places you've never been to. How do you know what the pyramids look like, or the jungles, or the Amazonian forest, or the Eiffel Tower, or any of these places all around the world? The only reason we know what it looks like is because of photography. Just imagine if we didn't have photography and you had no idea what any of these places were or what they looked like. It's pretty mind-blowing. Even events you've never seen. 9/11, concerts. There's just so many different things that we know about that are in our brains and our memories, but we hadn't actually ever experienced it. And we can only have a taste of that experience because of photography. And now if you're saying, well, what about video? Video is just a whole bunch of photos put together. That's the that's the truth of it. If video is measured in frames per second, let's say 30 frames per second, that means there's 30 photos every second of a video. Okay, so yes, video, photography, all of these things are just so important to our lives. So now let's do a quick little experiment. How do we know what someone looks like? So just take a moment and pause. Think of someone that's special to you that's not alive anymore. This could be a relative or a celebrity, a politician, whatever. Someone that's, just think of someone that's not alive anymore. Now, you have this image of them in your head, right? Is that image an actual memory or is it a photograph? I'm going to bet that you're actually remembering a photograph. So that's something that's really important to keep in mind, that we're just not capturing people, we're creating the memories that their loved ones are going to have of them. Touching. Okay, so everyone has a camera nowadays, like I said, but as portrait artists, we create a vision of our subject at their very best. It's not... Every day we might have, not a good hair day or a zit or something, but as portrait artists, it's our jobs to create this person at their best on that day. So let's talk about some different types of portraits. Portraiture is one of the most in-demand genres of photography. You can really move anywhere in the world and start a business with portraiture because it's needed everywhere. Now, some photographers do shoot multiple types of portraits. Some photographers just master one type. So let's look at some of the different types of portraiture. I'm going to give you a taste of what goes into each. Again, there's a whole class just on portraiture, and this is one of those things that takes a lifetime to master, but let's just take a quick look. Alright, so first off, let's talk about newborn and toddler photos. Alright, so soft light and props generally used. You can see this right here. We don't have any hard shadows anywhere. We have this very soft blanket thing around here, and these are all props. There are companies that create props specifically for newborn photography. This wood floor is probably one of these props. It's a backdrop, like a vinyl backdrop, and people who specialize in this tend to change them up every year, every couple years, and they keep adding to their inventory. So just something good to know, that it's not just buying a camera. Props are always also a thing. For overhead shots like this, just a quick, if you want to try this out of nowhere, make sure your camera strap's around your neck. Don't want the camera falling and hitting baby, okay? Some photographers, they offer packages that include photo shoots throughout the first years of a child's life. So maybe you'll have a newborn, then a 3-month, then a 6-month, then a 1 year, then a 2 year. And offering packages like this is a really great way to basically build in repeat customers. All right. Oh, love this image. Okay, so as kids get older, you do want to use faster shutter speeds and continuous shooting. And let me remind you, with continuous shooting, that means you're holding down the button and it's taking a bunch of photos. Because as they do get older, they get a little antsy, they start moving around more. It kind of can become an issue to get them to hold still for a pose. If you're going to go into photographing kids, you have to be patient and you have to work well with kids. There's going to be times when a kid is going to be hungry or just upset and crying, and if you're one of those people that's able to talk to kids and get them to calm down, then you'll do really well in this. Alright, so family portraits. Okay, we all know about family portraits. So the busiest time of year for this is usually fall and winter, since people want photos for their holiday cards. Something important to know when you're photographing multiple people like this is using f5.6 or a smaller aperture, so 5.6, 7.1, 8, 11, depending on how many people back are stacked, because you want to make sure that you have enough depth of field to get everyone in there. Don't automatically go to like f2.8 or something, because the kids might be in focus, but then the people in the background won't, something like that. And the truth is that the more people there is, the more difficult it gets to pose. There's a whole science to posing that you guys will learn about later if you take that portraiture class. And something else, take multiple shots in case someone's eyes are closed. This is a great reason to learn Photoshop, because if you have, this person's eyes closed and this person's eyes closed, you can actually combine the photos with where they have them open pretty fairly easily. BTW, I also teach Photoshop, so come take a class with me. All right. Kids, school, and sports photos. So, why are they so terrible? They're always like terrible, right? I'm in some Photoshop groups online, and there's parents that post their children's school pics all the time and get really mad. They're like, why didn't the photographer take the time to fix this or direct them or blah blah blah? Well, here's why. Since there are so many kids that need to be photographed in a short time period, a one-size-all approach is used. And what do I mean by that? If you've ever taken a photo like this, you probably already have an idea, right? There's one chair sitting there, one background, the lights are set up, there's no moving anything around. It's just like sit down, smile, click. Sit down, smile, click. You have to keep going that fast in order to get everyone's photo taken. So yeah, these photographers, they don't make that much. From what I've heard, from the ads I've seen, they don't make that much. In fact, I've seen ads that say no experience necessary. Because it's all set up by the main photographer. They set up the light. You can see that, so, one way to tell the lighting is by looking at the catch lights in people's eyes. So right here we have that little white catch light, and that's coming from right over here. So the light was probably right next to the photographer, maybe a little bit over. Yeah, so that's just, sit down, take the photo. Let's see, this one looks like it's probably a little higher, so this was probably just a little bit above the camera. And I'm sorry, parents, like it sucks, but that's just how it goes. If you want really nice photos of your kid every year, you're gonna have to hire a photographer who's gonna cost more and gonna actually be able to take the time to work with the kid. So that's my rant. Um, but this can be a good experience for new photographers. Like I said, a lot of times these ads say no experience necessary, so you can come in, at least learn, if you're coming in and everything's set up already, you can talk to the photographer and say, hey, next shoot, can I come early and help you set up the equipment? So you get some practice messing with their equipment, learning how to set things up and such. Is it a forever job? I don't know. I haven't met anyone that has stayed doing this forever, but I'm sure there are some people that do it. Maybe the owners of the companies. I'm not sure, but it's good practice. So you might want to think about looking for those ads. All right, graduation and senior portraits. So graduation photos, but what I mean by that is at the actual event. So a lot of you, probably graduated high school recently, and you walked across the stage, and as you got handed your diploma, there was a flash, someone took a photo. When you got off the stage, it depends on the graduation, but a lot of times they'll have a backdrop, the light set up, and hey, smile, bam, take a photo. So again, this is a one-size-fits-all type of approach. Just because of the speed that it has to happen. And to be honest, from what I've heard, I have a couple friends who do this. It does pay pretty good depending on the area you're in. It's seasonal work, obviously, so graduations only happen in May, usually May, June-ish. So you get up there, you stand in one place, you click. A little bit more pay than doing the kids' school photography. But yeah, really good experience. And like I said, I have friends who still do this to this day. They have their regular photography jobs, and then when graduation season comes around, they pick up a job. They have companies that they work with to specifically do this. Now, senior portraits are more like traditional photo shoots. You have time with the person, you get to pose them, do some lighting, play with the backgrounds, stuff like that. But you should be getting paid more for that because it's a one-on-one type of thing. It's going to take a lot more time. Okay, weddings. Okay, so weddings. Ooh, weddings are huge. So they are probably one of the most intense yet rewarding types of portrait photography. And one of the reasons they're so intense is because it's a combination of many different types of portraiture. We're talking about obviously posed portraiture, like in this image here. Really nice photo. Now you can't see the whole thing, but beautiful image. Love her earrings. But okay, anyways, posed portraiture, there's sometimes an element of fashion because these dresses are expensive, and so you usually want to take a couple photos of just the dress so you have more of a fashion, fine art type of feeling type of shoot. You're taking editorial and candid portraits. Sometimes they are, in the moment. Sometimes they're posed, but to pose to feel like it's in the moment. I think I have an example coming up here. You're also shooting still life. And by still life, I mean kind of like commercial photography where you're shooting objects. You're shooting the rings, the shoes, you're shooting the decorations. And it's event photography. It's running around and taking photos of family members having fun, friends dancing. So, I mean, it's all kinds of photography all put into one day, okay? And the truth is yeah, these when you're shooting a wedding, sometimes you're working 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours, depending on what it is, because you have to think about if you're getting hired to do the pre-shoot when everyone's getting ready. That could be really early in the day, and then the actual ceremony, and then the reception. How long is this all going to go? Yeah, so you could be shooting 12, 16-hour days. That's part of the reason it's so expensive. On top of that, you have hours of editing. It's not just the time you're there to shoot. I think a lot of people, when they're hiring wedding photographers, forget that it's not just, well, why should I pay someone $5,000 for 8 hours? It's not just that 8 hours. It's the time before the shoots to get everything ready, meet with the clients, figure out where everything's going to be. A lot of high-end photographers scout the location first, so they'll go there, days or weeks beforehand to look at the lighting, look at the backgrounds, get ideas for how they're going to actually shoot it, making shot lists, all that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, like I said, hours of editing afterwards, definitely. They're also expensive because you want to use top of the line equipment when you're shooting weddings. You don't want to shoot with a really cheap camera. You want really high quality images, and if you remember from our equipment lecture, I talked about how some cameras have like dual SD card slots or dual battery slots. Weddings are a perfect time to use a camera like that because with the SD cards you can take a photo and you can set it up in the camera menu to duplicate the photo onto each card. So if one card goes bad in the middle of the shoot, you still have all the images on the other one. Some people will shoot RAW on one card and then JPEG on the other. So if they have to do a really fast turnaround, I think I remember talking to you guys about like some high-end photographers now will be shooting, the JPEGs will be going to their assistants who are editing and putting together a slideshow, so by the time everyone shows up at the reception, there's a slideshow of what just happened already happening. So that's when JPEGs are a little faster to work with. So wedding photographers are expensive, but if you remember, I just talked about our photographs are creating memories. So when people, really, if you're gonna get married and you're, hemming and hawing about how much to pay for a photographer, pay as much as you can. It should be one of the higher things in your budget because that's how you're gonna have your memories. You can have the most beautiful bouquets in the world, but if you don't have photos of it, you're only gonna remember it for so long. You'll be like, oh yeah, I had white roses, but will you really be able to remember what they looked like? Or if you have a photo, you know exactly what they look like. Was it a good photographer? Did they take a good photo of those flowers? Did they forget because they didn't have a shot list? All these things become important. So yeah, when it comes to wedding photographers, you want to, if you're going to hire one, you want to pay top dollar. If you're going to be one, you want to be on your game and producing beautiful work. I'm going to get into how you can get better at this in just a minute. Oh, and one last thing, engagement photos are often included in the package as either an add-on or just automatically. Sometimes it's used as like a promotional thing, like free engagement, but it's just really built in. You just got to build it into your price. So this photo is kind of an example of more of like a fashion type of shoot, right? So it's not so much of her and the groom. We have this really beautiful split composition, this lovely light coming in. Her dress is completely on display. So this is what I mean when you're talking about a little bit more of a fashion type of shoot. But it's great because a wedding is a time when everyone is looking their best. They have their hair done, their makeup done. So all those little things that maybe would be an issue in other shoots are already taken care of. All right. So now many photographers do use second shooters or assistants to help cover all the photos. And this can be a really great way for you to get some experience and some practice. So I would suggest starting with assisting. Assisting usually means that you're holding camera bags, you're handing the photographer lenses, batteries, SD cards, water, food, things like that. Maybe you're moving lighting around, but it could be a really great way to just get your feet wet and just see how it feels, see if it's something that you really want to do. Some people just absolutely love doing wedding photography, and if you find out that that's your passion, go with it. Once you assist a couple times and you've been practicing your shooting and you're getting some really nice compositions, then second shooting could be something that you look into. Second shooting is basically like the main photographer will be following the bride and groom around and getting all of those photos, and you're taking care of the secondary photos like the shots of the place settings, the shots of the cake, maybe shots of the guests while they're having fun or whatever. So yeah, second shooting can be a really great way to see if your if you're going to want to become a wedding photographer, and to really work on your photos and make sure you're up to par. All right, and this is one of those photos that it's kind of like that, editorial feel. It looks like it was like kind of just caught in the moment. I have a feeling that it was probably posed. The photographer probably told them, hey, pick her up and spin her around, and every time he spinned her around, he took a photo. Okay, but these are really fun photos. They've become a lot more popular in the last couple years, and also because they tell a story. So not just a pose portrait, but you also want to start telling stories with this photography as well. All right, so here's an example of still life photography. Still life being objects. So it's very similar to commercial photography, but you don't have nearly the time. So with the commercial photo shoot, we saw that there's all these people and they're all, working together and setting stuff up. They're in a studio. But when you're doing this, a lot of times it's like wherever the bride is getting ready, which could be like a hotel room, which could be, their home, something like that. And so you really got to think on your feet. You still got to use lighting. You still got to figure out good compositions, but you have to work a lot quickly. So that's when paying attention to the light around you can become really important. All right, and then of course we have the candid reception photos. You want those photos of people dancing, having fun, and this is just a whole nother genre of photography. This is more like a documentary, right? You're here documenting the event. You're not posing people, you're not directing people, you're just there. But despite that, you still need to be looking for good angles and good lighting. And let's see what else I have on here. Oh yeah, so of course the work goes way beyond the day of the wedding. I already mentioned this. Pre-planning is super important. It'll help you feel more confident as well. So like that photo plan that I shared with you guys, basically making a huge one of those shot lists. What shots are you getting? And one thing that I suggest is to print it out. I know it's easy to have it on your phone, but if someone's at a wedding and they see a photographer pull their phone out, they're not thinking, oh, they're using their shot list. They're thinking, wow, that's a lazy photographer. Why are they on their phone? It's also faster sometimes with just having that paper with a pen in your pocket, pull it out. I got this shot. Take every time you get a little bit of a break, you pull it out and be like, yes, got that shot, got that shot, got that shot, got that shot. Move it on. Look, what do I still need to get? Oh no, I still need to get the bride with her mother. Okay, let's go do that now. Things like that. And something else to know is that the better you get at shooting, the less editing you have to do, which translates to more money per hour, because if you're editing faster, you have to edit less, you're spending less time on it, and that means you're going to make more money. So always a good reason to get better. I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, you can just fix it in Photoshop. You don't want to spend hours and hours of your life fixing something that you could have taken care of easily if you would have just slowed down for a second and moved that little bit of hair out of the way. Okay? Trust me. Sometimes it's inevitable, but yeah. Okay, moving on. Headshots. All right, so headshots. Pretty much every professional needs a headshot. All right, whether you're a real estate agent, a lawyer, a doctor, me, a teacher, I had headshots done pretty recently. Everyone needs it for their company website, promotional materials, social media. So this is a whole nother way to make money with photography. And let me see that there? See that catch light? That catch light is so clear I can see it's an umbrella. It's a light with an umbrella over it, and it was right over here, right above the photographer. So yeah, kind of fun to pick apart photos like this. The pupils are really wide. Anyways, not all headshots have to be like this, just straight on. This is just something friendly and simple like this is good for professionals who just need to make sure people know what they look like, what to expect when they meet them. But you also can get moody with your headshots, especially with people in creative fields. So I could see this as maybe being for like an actor, maybe a musician, something like that. It shows a different side of them, especially when you work with actors. Headshots are huge if you move to LA. There's always work for headshots down there. But they usually want to show different sides of their personality and what they can offer to a production. So doing stuff that's maybe serious or silly or happy or sad, there's a lot of different headshots options, especially when you start working with creative people. So that could be really fun as well. Okay, so that's it for the types, and that's, there's a couple more I could have thrown in, but that's the basics. Just some things to get you guys thinking about possible career opportunities. But now let's talk about some quick tips. So set your focus point on the eye closest to you. So if someone's posing like this, set your focus point on this eye. No matter how shallow your depth of field, you want to make sure the eyes are in focus, or eye. If you have a really shallow depth of field, this eye might go out of focus. But as long as the eye that's closest to you is in focus, then it'll be a better portrait. As they say, eyes are the windows of the soul. So yeah, that's if you're ever wondering where do I focus when you're taking a portrait, it's the eyes. Okay, make sure the eyes are clear, or the eye closest to you. You usually shoot with a larger aperture, so you have a shallow depth of field, especially with single people, but like I mentioned with groups, you kind of have to go with a smaller aperture to get that deeper depth of field. Soft light is generally more flattering than hard light, so let's just take a quick look to see if we had any hard light. So this looks pretty soft. This is a combination. So we have a main light that's coming here. That's kind of a hardish light, but then we have this. See how much there's a shadow here versus over here? We're going to get into this in a minute, but they use the reflector. And you could see that the light is barely peeking over here, so yeah, it was right coming in from over here. Definitely a soft light. Look at that shadow under the nose, very soft. This one, soft light. Yeah, it looks like it might have been a cloudy day or something, but yeah, no hard shadows in there, soft light. This is a bit of a harder light, but we're working with objects, so it's not as big a deal. Soft light, definitely soft light. Diffused light, yep, soft. Look at that window light. Windows are a great place to find soft, flattering light for people. This one, soft light, no hard edges. Soft light, soft light. Yeah, that's pretty soft. Soft, yeah. So there you go. I just proved it right there. People do use a direct light sometimes, but as I've mentioned before, it's usually for edgier portraits. Someone who's trying to come off as rebellious, or sometimes like movie posters, you'll see hard light, and that's more like, maybe for a villain or something. But yeah, something edgier. In general, soft light is more flattering, so that's what people use. Besides window light, you can also find soft light in shady areas. So even on a bright sunny day, find the shady side of a building, bam, you have soft light. And overcast days. Overcast days, the clouds are just a big diffuser. Okay, something else is be eye level with your subject. Now these are pretty general. As I've talked about before, there's rules in photography, and sometimes the rules are to make something look good or look aesthetically pleasing. Sometimes there's times where you don't want to do that. Like I said, unless you're trying to make a statement. So shooting your subject from above, where they're below you, will make them look submissive. While if you're shooting from below, looking up to them, it'll make them look more dominant. So if you were doing a portrait, let's say of a famous actor that was about to be in a movie where they were the bad guy and you want them to look mean and dominant, shooting from from below, so you're looking up to them, will give them more of that look. So there's times to break the rules. But in general, if you're doing portrait photography where you want people to just look their best, you definitely just want to go with eye level. You don't want to shoot down on them. You don't want to see the tops of their heads. You don't want to shoot up on them and see the inside of their noses. Whatever is closest to the camera will be the largest in the photo. So this might not seem like a huge deal, but if you're working with someone that, let's say they have a large nose, then having them right here with the nose, straight on, that's going to make it look even larger. If they have a large forehead and you have them tilting their head down a little bit, their forehead's going to look larger. A way to use this for your advantage is if someone has one eye that's smaller than the other. I think this one's my small eye. You put that one closer to the camera, my small eye is going to look bigger, and then it's going to look more even with this other eye. So now you've solved my small eye problem. So it's just important to keep these things in mind. If you have someone posing and they have their elbow out, then their elbow is going to look huge. But if you have them pull it back and put their arm down or like this instead, then it's going to be more on the same level and not as close to the camera and not going to be as much of an issue. So if you're taking a photo of someone and you're like, wow, that some body part of theirs is looking really big, figure out a way to get it away so it's further from the camera, moving their posing or something, and it'll help. And last but not least, when it comes to this type of portraiture, retouching should be minimal so the person still looks like themselves, okay? Been classic examples throughout time of people overly retouching, and there's always blowback on it. You want people to look like themselves. All right, so let's talk about studio lighting. Now this is really important because your next project is going to be using these very lights. You're not going to be doing a portrait, you're going to be shooting an object, but yeah, so pay attention, all right? There are 4 main types of lighting that are combined when shooting in a studio. You have your main light, your fill light, your backlight or your hair light, and your background light. What do all these do? So the main light is the brightest light. It's going to be director diffuse and the direction. Both of those things help set the mood of the photo. The fill light is going to be what fills in the shadow. So if you have a main light coming in on this side, you have a bunch of shadow on this side, you have a fill light here. Not to make it as bright as the main side, but to make the shadows not as dark. A lot of times you use a reflector for this, and a reflector is just a big piece of either white, could be white fabric, white like cardboard type of material. Some people use a metallic. You'll see people having like these kind of, it's like fabric on a little frame thing. There'll be gold reflectors, silver reflectors that you can use for this as well. So a back or hair light is a backlight that's used to illuminate the edges. And I'm about to show you examples of all of this, so I just want to get this information out real quick. It's used to illuminate the edges of the subject, so that they're separated from the background, so they don't blend into the background. And the background light also helps separate the subject more from the background. It can also add a whole mood. You can have a light right centered on the background and it will create a circular gradient coming out, and the closer you get, the brighter it'll get. So you could have a gray background, but you get a light close enough to it and you have your camera setting set to overexpose a bit, and that will actually start looking like a white background. So yeah, lots of stuff you can do with backgrounds. You can add color gels. There's so much fun stuff to do in the studio. Alright, so let's take a look at the 4 lights by themselves. Okay, so this one is just the main light. Alright, so we have a main light. It's coming in from the side, so you know they're side lit. You can see the split basically right down on the side of the face. Alright, so this is an example of just the fill light. So I had taken away the main light. There was a little bit of ambient light going around, but and I was using a reflector, a piece of whiteboard, to just pull in and just barely light up. And you can see if I go back here how bright this is, and then how this is not nearly as bright as that. Okay, so here's that rim light or hair light, and so it's coming in from the corner and just barely skimming the edges of this little figurine so that they are separated from the background. And finally, a background light, so it's just barely hitting the background just to lighten it a little bit in order to give that separation. So even though I was going for a dark background, still was lighting it. Okay, so next I'm going to show you a progression. My little bar over here. There we go. A progression of photos where I'm adding lights as we go. And this is going to be somewhat of the way that you do your project. You're going to start with one light and then start adding all of the other lights as you go to build up this lighting. So first off, we have the main light, and you can see that it's again that side light. It's kind of dramatic. This, little figurine is singing, so I went with more of a dramatic look. But yeah, coming into from the side, and you got to just remember that the main light is going to be the brightest light. If you need it to be brighter, you can get it closer, as close as you can to your subject. If you need it to be darker, just pull the light back a bit, and it'll take away the intensity. Let's see. Okay, so next, so this is the main light, but I've also added the rim lights. So let's take a look back again. So see here, we have a nice separation from the background. Let's go back up here. All right, so there is like almost no separation. It starts to just blend into the background almost here. So big difference already right there. Now, I know I'm saying big difference, and for the average person, it's like, wait, what's going on? But once you start working with this and you really see the difference, you understand that this is what makes a photo look more professional. All right, so now, yeah, woo, look at that. Nice separation from the background. Sweet, 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 sweet. Okay, and next, I think this one is the back. Yeah, this is definitely the background. So look at the background there. It's at that black, and now we have more of a dark gray. Slight difference, but again, helps separate from the background. We have more separation going on, especially down here with the pants. It was still pretty dark going on here, so adding that little bit of pop. There you go. Okay, last but not least is the fill light. All right, look at that fill. So before, we still want to have this look of shadow, but we want to be able to see the details of what's going on. And this is going to especially help with like hair texture, right? So let's go back again and let's look at how dark that image, that side was. Okay, so yeah, you can barely see the hair texture here, but then I bring in that fill light, and now we still have the mood of being lit from the side, but now we can actually see the details going on in here too, and on the pants. Sweet. So that's the 4 lights. Bam. Now, one more thing I want to show you. You might be thinking, like I told you could use a reflector, which for this assignment is just going to be like a white piece of board or thick paper or something like that, but it can really make a huge difference on how close that reflector is to your subject. So these are 4 photos where where I changed how close the reflector was. So there we go. All right, we still have the split, we still have the shadow, but a lot closer. Okay, now that's getting really bright. I'd say the cheeks are starting to be almost the same brightness. And then at this point, it is the same brightness. So I don't even have another light. I'm just using that reflector to reflect the light back into the subject and light them. So you do have to be careful with how close that reflector is, because that will definitely affect how dark those shadows are. Okay, and last but not least, I think this is, no, that's not last but not least. Oh, we're already getting late. Okay, so here's the actual setup I use for the photos. Let's see, where's my place? There we go. Okay, so, and this is something like what you're going to be doing for your project. So you might want to save this image. So we have the main light. The main light is the brightest. Now, in this case, I was using this really old light. It's actually made for video from for way back in the 50s, I think it was. So it is super powerful, so I had to have it actually pretty far away to get the amount of light I wanted, but it's just going to depend. If you have two lights that are exactly the same, then you would want the main light to be closer. But in this case, you know, because it was such a powerful light, that's not what we did. And don't freak out about like buying special lights for this project. The whole point of this is to kind of do it DIY, do it yourself style. So using things like flashlights is going to work fine. Your flashlights on your phone, stuff like that. I'm going to get more into that on the assignment, don't worry. Alright, so we have the main light, and that's the brightest one. It's setting the mood. Now, something I haven't talked about yet is the camera position. It's really important to keep the camera position the same, because how the light looks is all dependent on what's coming through the camera. It's going to look differently if you move your camera. So you want to set up your camera and figure out your angle first, figure out your composition first, and then start setting up the lights, and you're checking your viewfinder constantly. You set up a light, check, no, it's too bright, pull it, check. I mean, it's just a constant back and forth of trying to get it just right, because all that matters is what's coming through the lens. You could see the crazy mess that was going on in my office that day, not just from these lights, but all this random artwork and stuff, but the photos look like this. Okay, so it doesn't matter what's going on outside of the camera, all that matters is what's going on in the view. So that's one of the reasons it's just so important to either use a tripod, set it up on something that's stable, a table, a chair, something, so stack of books, I don't know. You have to get creative with this, but you want to keep your camera in the same position. We have the backlight. Now the backlight for this was actually just was it the ambient light? I put ambient light there, but I think what was happening, if I'm remembering correctly on this day, was that this was so bright it was spilling all kinds of light back here, and I used this white card to block the light, but I moved it back and forth until just a little bit of light was actually hitting back there. Alright, next I have my hair or rim light, and so that's the one that's hitting the edge of the subject, and so that's coming from back here and from an angle. Alright, so again, you know, you just have to check when you're setting these lights that they're not actually in the frame. But I know right here it looks like it's just right behind it, but it was actually to the side just enough so that you couldn't see it in the photo. And it was just very slight movements. Alright, and then my fill light was my reflector. Now in this photo, that's not where my actual reflector was set up. I was actually moving it with my hand while taking the photo, but I couldn't do that to get the full shot. Okay, you know what I mean, right? Anyways, so this is all I was using. It was just a piece of whiteboard, and I was just moving it closer and further until I found the right light that looked good. Okay, now once you take the portraiture class, you'll see that there's actual like mathematical ratios that people use. It's a whole nother thing. We're not getting into that right now, but yeah, for this it's just going to be kind of using your eye and figuring out what looks good. You still want to have shadow in there, but you don't want the shadow to be so dark that you don't see any details. Okay, so this makes me sad. 42 minutes. I had 3 photographers. There's lots of famous photographers out there, but there's 3, and I'll just do a really quick overview of them. So George Hurrell, classic Hollywood glamour lighting. This is where we get, if we remember from that angles, one of the first projects where we were doing angles of light. He's kind of the person who came up with these, with the butterfly light. Okay, this is the loop lighting, Rembrandt lighting, which is actually based off a painter's type of lighting. Side lighting. Yeah, he has this really wonderful work. Anytime you think of old Hollywood type of glamour, it's going to be a George Hurrell photograph. And there's a website here if you'd like to check him out. Check out some more photos. Annie Leibovitz is a fantastic photographer. She's still shooting to this day. She creates iconic photos of some of the most famous people in the world, and she has a whole bunch of assistants. So here's a couple photos, and here's the Queen of England, and I'll just make this optional. I really wanted to look at this stuff. Okay, so here's an optional video. It's a photo shoot of that photo of the Queen of England, And I guess something I can point out is that I believe it says that she has 11 assistants, and they took 3 weeks of planning for a 30-minute photo shoot. Okay, so lots of planning, especially the more famous someone gets, the less time you get to photograph them. I remember, I think it was Obama was famous for hating to take photos, and he'd give photographers like 5 minutes. Okay, so the higher you get, the less time you have, but that means more planning comes in. Now Platon, I actually think Platon took, this is Annie right here, I think he took this photo of Annie Leibovitz, that looks like his style. Platon breaks the rules a bit because he uses wide angle lenses, he still shoots in film, but he uses it to his advantage. He has important parts of the person closest to the lens so that they really become larger than life and stick out more. And he has this really great way of getting to know people and getting them comfortable really fast, which makes a huge difference in his photos, and that's him right over here. So here's another video where he kind of shows his process and shooting some different celebrities. It's a really, really interesting video. I would highly recommend that you guys come back and watch this. Alright guys, so that's what we're covering today for the intro for photography, for portrait photography. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you got inspired.